Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Today we are going to do a contemporary take on a mayonnaise cake. And then in a future upcoming episode of the old cookbook show, we're going to do a historic mayonnaise cake, or, you know, the dawn of the mayonnaise cake. So the first thing I've done is I've got about a third of a cup of hot water here, and I'm just dissolving some instant coffee in that hot water. Now, into the stand mixer, I'm going to put 3 eggs. Now, the story behind the mayonnaise cake is that sometime in, the Great Depression, and you can kind of tag this to like 1937, the wife of an executive at Hellmann's Mayonnaise is making a cake in her kitchen at home, and she doesn't have enough eggs or oil to make the cake. She doesn't have any eggs or oil to make the cake, so she substitutes in the mayonnaise and comes up with a chocolate cake that's, absolutely amazing. Everybody loves it. People at Hellmann's grab onto this cake and they publish it in a recipe book in 1937, and the rest is history. It becomes a Great Depression staple. The whole idea being that, if you can't afford eggs and oil, just use mayonnaise in your cake. From a marketing standpoint, it's brilliant. From a cost-saving standpoint, I highly doubt that if you couldn't afford eggs and oil to make a chocolate cake, that you would have enough money to buy prepared mayonnaise. So I'm going to put the mixer on. And like with anything, why let trivial facts get in the way of a great story? I mean, it sounds like a great story. So as that's whipping together, I'm going to add in some vanilla. But as I researched this cake, I realized that much earlier, in the 1920s, and the earliest I've been able to find at this point is 1927, a syndicated recipe column publishes in 1927 a cake called Mayonnaise Cake, except you're not adding prepared mayonnaise. You're taking the eggs, you're whipping those up with some oil, essentially making mayonnaise, and then adding that to the cake. And what this did was give a much more tender cake and a cake that lasted a lot longer on the counter. So you didn't have to eat it that day. 2-3 days later, you would still have a moist and delicious cake to serve. So in this bowl, I have flour. To that, I'm going to add cocoa, cinnamon, chili powder, salt, baking powder, and baking soda. And we'll just give that a really good stir. Get the flour and the cocoa powder all completely mixed together. And that 1927 mayonnaise cake, in the end, bears very little resemblance to the 1930s Hellmann's version. And you'll see that when we actually make them. So next into here is 1 cup of mayonnaise. And we mix that in. Now, I need about 1 cup of buttermilk. And yes, this is a 1 cup measure. Every time I use it, people say, oh no, I've mismeasured, that this is obviously 2 cups. And yes, this is a 1 cup measure, and I can see why you would be confused, but I have poured liquid back and forth between these 2 vessels over and over and over and over again. This is 1 cup, just like the markings on the outside say it is. So now we just put all of these things into here, alternating between wet and dry and wet and dry and wet and dry. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of the flour and cocoa, then I'll put in the coffee, then I'll go back and forth between the flour, cocoa, and the buttermilk. Now, the buttermilk is not strictly necessary. Usually you're putting buttermilk into a cake like this in order to use the acid to activate the baking soda. But in this case, we don't need it. There's more than enough acid in the cocoa and the mayonnaise. I mean, the mayonnaise is stabilized with various types of acid. So we don't really need the buttermilk. You could use regular milk. You could use water, for sure. I just like the taste of the buttermilk in the cake, so I put it in. You don't need it. So last in, I put some chocolate chips just because, you know, I like chocolate chips. They're fun. I've got a 9x13 cake pan. I've got it greased and a parchment sling in the bottom just to make it easier to get the cake out at the end. I'll whack this in there. Oven's preheated to 350. Scrape the last little bit in there. Smooth it out a little bit. And like all of our videos, the recipe is in the description box below. Okay, the cake is out of the oven and it's cooling down over there on the counter. We're going to make a really simple cream cheese, butter, cocoa powder, chocolate frosting. So now that the butter is in the mixer, I'm going to put in a brick of cream cheese and we're just going to mix those two together. Now, cocoa powder is notoriously difficult to mix with other things. So I'm going to put it into this bowl first. And I'm going to put in about half of the icing sugar that I need for the recipe. I'm going to mix them together, then mix them in, and then mix in the rest of the icing sugar. It just makes everything go together so much easier. Okay, a little bit of vanilla. Put that much. And I'm going to put in some whipping cream. About a quarter cup. So this is where the art of making our frosting comes in. I know that I'm going to need this much icing sugar and cocoa at least, and probably twice as much icing sugar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting this in, mixing it in a little bit at a time, and then I just look at the consistency of the frosting and decide how much more of the icing sugar I'm going to put in. And so it comes down to consistency, texture, and tasting to decide if you've got enough in there. And eventually you just get to know to eyeball it. It becomes really easy. And then you know the drill. You put the icing on the cake. Okay, time for cake. Now, I guess it is a sheet pan cake, Jules.
Hey, my timing's perfect. Yes, it's on a sheet.
Well, I couldn't find the serving tray. I know that I've got a serving tray for that size of cake, but I couldn't find it, not for the life of me.
I can't think of when I've seen it last. Oh, we didn't leave it somewhere.
Well, I think it's down in the equipment room somewhere. So,
you can imagine that Glen has a very, very large equipment room for cooking.
This cake is going to be amazing.
Okay, it's cake.
That biryani was amazing.
It was amazing.
Did you check out the biryani? Here we go. So.
Oh, it's like double chocolate.
It is a double chocolate. It is. I'm not going to tell you what it is.
I was going to have some icing right away, but you know.
I'm not going to tell you what it is. Go ahead. Jump in there and we'll see.
So you're saying it might not be chocolate? Looks chocolate.
No, it's definitely
Oh, I
chocolate.
was expecting, you know.
No, definitely chocolate. It's been in the fridge, so.
Put some crunchy bits. Is that chocolate bits?
Chocolate chips. Mm-hmm. So it's a mayonnaise cake.
Okay. Oh, I vaguely remember one of those from, 1978. Making one.
So, well, yeah.
And of course, I would not say, "Oh, look, I taste mayonnaise in this."
No.
Like, there's no.
No, there's no. You don't taste it at
But
all.
it makes it super moist.
Super moist. Maybe a few too many chocolate chips. Not something that I say very often.
That last bite probably.
A few too many chocolate chips. But it is a really good moist cake. It's dense, it's moist, it's rich. You don't taste the coffee,
Yep,
but
I do not.
but the coffee elevates the chocolate flavor. The cinnamon and the chili powder are in there in the background. Again, just elevating the chocolate flavor.
It's a pretty good chocolate cake.
So we're going to come back and we're going to do the mayonnaise cake again. We're going to do the one from 1937, which is chocolate. And we're going to do the one from 1927, which is a date cake with mayonnaise.
Are you going to make mayonnaise as well?
Well,
I know that we probably...
the 1927 cake, part of the instruction is to whip the eggs and the oil to make the mayonnaise. You're not grabbing for a jar of mayonnaise from the fridge. The 1937 cake, you're grabbing for the jar of mayonnaise. So come on back for those. In the meantime, I'm just going to eat biryani and cake all night.
The cake is going over well.
Thanks for dropping by.
See you again soon.